safer. This is a safe R-rated, slasher film. And it's one of those situations where it's like, this is made in such a way that, this is for baby's first slasher movie. This is every 10-year-old out there that was like wants to watch a horror movie this summer and this fall. This is the one that I think any parent in this country could feel safe putting on for them. You know what I mean? Because it's basically a Scooby-Doo episode where people actually die.
Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, that is Chuck, and this is episode 67. In case you didn't hear, summer 2025, it's the summer of horror. We have Final Destination, we have Bring Her Back, 28 years later, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and Weapons. But first, we've got a little bit of an appetizer to get things going. Clown in a Cornfield. It's the latest little horror movie that could. A low-budget affair that is creating a simmering buzz. That is going to be our featured review for today. We've also got some movie news to talk about. In particular, one big story, maybe the most important news story of the year when it comes to film and TV. But we'll get to that in a little bit. As always, we're also going to be talking about what else we've been watching this week. We're going to be talking about our non-film recommendations with the Mentionable. And in case you haven't already, please do subscribe. Let us know how we're doing. We have this little hobbyist channel, and we always like to see those subscriber numbers go up so that we know that you like what we're dishing out. But Chuck, anything else you wanted to say before we got into the meat of things today?
Yeah, it's like if we get enough of you loyal and generous subscribers and commenters, and likers and dinging the bell and all that nonsense, because we don't do that pitch, that annoying YouTuber shtick. It's not something we will always say, hey, yeah, like and subscribe, but we really don't go crazy with it. But we do want to give the video producers who randomly contact us and want to work for us to do all the heavy lifting for us so we can make more stuff. If we could get enough shekels to employ them, maybe that would be cool. But we need more of you to do that. And I guess we have to earn that ourselves by being more timely, getting stuff out there. But the reality is there might not be as many things for us to talk about in Trump's America. We hate politics in this channel, but we got no choice. We got to get into it. We got to talk about the realities of tariffs, which were stuff that I think was mentioned once or twice in my government class in high school, but I never had to actually process or think about what the fuck it was until the last 5 years or so. And here we are in all this stuff is getting tariffed. The Switch 2 is going to cost way too much money. Video games are going to cost too much money. Everything is probably going to cost way too much money for a while. But now we're going to make it so that there's 100% tariffs on films produced outside the United States. So what does this mean, that from their domestic take that there will be a 100% tariff on it?
The problem with this story is that there's so little information, official information, I should say. And so this all started with just a Donald Trump tweet that basically just said, I have authorized a 100% tariff on all films produced outside the U.S. And then he sort of went on to reason that foreign films are a national security threat and the American movie industry is dying. But he said very little about his actual plan, which is often what happens with Trump, as far as he tweets something out and he's limited by the character limit on Twitter or, whatever. And then the next week is spent with people just freaking out, looking for clarity, looking for him to, put finer points on things, but he doesn't. And so that's kind of where we're at. And there have been little glimmers of information that have come out, which we will get to, not from him, from other things. But Yeah, we don't know. The answer to your question is we don't know.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
that's kind of where we're at with that. But one of the interesting sticking points for me with this story, and this is one of the things that sort of trickled out, is that, and this is more interesting to me, honestly, than the original tweet, because what we found out was that John Voight, who people, if you don't know, is one of Trump's Hollywood ambassadors, along with Mel Gibson and Sylvester Stallone. John Voight's office was flooded with requests for meetings the day after this tweet came out, specifically him. And so that was sort of a weird thing where it was like, okay, why John Voight? Why is he like the guy that everyone's flocking to? Why is his office the one that's getting all of the calls and the meeting requests? And then we found out that through Deadline, that John Voight had a meeting with Trump the day before Trump's tweet, where he presented his plan to save Hollywood. And you can go read that whole plan. It's all up on deadline.com. They got a hold of the entire document. It's only 5 pages long. And basically Trump tweeted this tweet in response to his meeting that he had with John Voight. And I don't know, did you get a chance to look over that document about John Voight's plan to save Hollywood?
I hadn't yet, but it kind of sounds like this is like what like Agenda 2025, but for conservative Hollywood folk.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
it's basically I mean it's
okay.
essentially like what Trump is proposing, but maybe a little bit more extreme, I guess, because
Okay.
basically what it is John Voight is proposing a 10 to 20% federal tax credit that would be stackable with state tax credits for
Okay.
films that are produced in the US. He's also proposing that if a film elects to produce in a foreign country, and they get it tax incentives from that country, that a tariff will be applied to their incentives that is equal to
Oh.
120%. So basically, if you choose to film in a foreign country, your tax incentive is going to be offset by a tariff.
Completely.
Um,
You're gonna be dinged like, yeah, like 20-25%
yep.
for
Yeah.
every
So I mean,
dollar
there's
you try and save.
yeah. So there's no reason to film in a foreign country anymore. And then also, here's my favorite thing. Part of his plan is that Voight is proposing what he calls an American cultural test on films, where it is basically partially used to determine your tax credit percentage. So, he had floated, 10 to 20%. And the way in which they decide whether you get 10 or you get 20 or something in between that is through a points-based system that awards your film based on things
Oh, I
like the
hate
number of
this.
Americans. Yeah, it's pretty awful. So it
But
awards your film based on
he's using like a
a UK thing.
UK thing
Yeah.
as an example. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, I hate this. I
Yeah,
hate
it's
this
awful.
so much because
This is already in place in the UK and Canada, actually, which is something that I didn't know about. And so, I mean, shame on those countries for doing something like this, and shame on us if we decide to go this route. But yeah, basically, it's like you get points based on the number of Americans working on your project, the number of characters in the movie that are American, and if the film portrays American culture in an exceptional light. And so, yeah, I don't know, what do you have to say about that?
like here's the thing. The only aspect of this like cultural test that I like could agree with is making sure that at least half of your visual effects stuff happens domestically for an American
Sure.
film. For a Hollywood movie to like completely outsource all of that aspect, it puts a lot of American artists out of work because they're
Hmm.
going to South Korea, they're going to Japan or wherever the hell they're going. And that's a big deal for these really big tentpole operations. Like I remember when Rhythm and Hughes went out of business the same year that they won the Oscar for Life of Pi. Because
Yeah.
they just couldn't
Hmm.
afford, to do the quality of work they were doing with like the limited budgets that they were competing with from overseas operations. So You know, on that respect, I'm like, cool. But like, I hate this stuff when the UK does it. I hate this stuff when the EU does it. I don't want it happening here. Like, as far as like,
Hmm.
are you like doing like appropriate like American patriotic themes and stuff? Or are you just making America look bad? Well, you know, now we're gonna tax the shit out of you. It's like this is bonkers. This is stuff
Yeah.
that it's psychotic and it should not be happening.
Yeah, it's like to me it seems one step away from like China's like social credit system or something like that, where it's
Yeah,
like we are sort of getting to that point. And so yeah, don't like this at all. It's and luckily, I mean, there are things that are already, like I said earlier, that Trump has already sort of hinted at that he is changing from Voight's plan. Like, he has proposed a 100% tariff instead of a 120% tariff. And specifically, Voight seems very, very focused on bringing filming back to California. Like, Voight lives in LA. Voight grew up in LA. He's lived his entire life in Hollywood. And so he wants specifically stuff to come back to Hollywood. He doesn't give a shit about, you know, filming hotbeds in America currently like
yeah.
Georgia and New York. He doesn't give a shit about. He
Fuck
wants
Butte,
Hollywood.
Montana. You know,
Yeah, fuck
Yellowstone should be
Montana.
in, but should be filmed in California. We don't
Yeah.
want location shooting anywhere. We want California to be the world again, like it's the golden age of
Yes.
Hollywood.
Exactly. So yeah, he's very very concerned about that. And so his proposal is, in my opinion, pretty extreme, and it remains to be seen kind of what, Trump's going to do, if anything. I mean, the problem with this is we don't know if he's actually going to follow through on any of this,
Yeah,
because the problem with, I
no,
guess, Trump is that he's just as likely to follow through on something as he isn't. And it sort of seems like random as to like the stuff that he's, going to go all in on, and then the stuff that he just kind of shoots a tweet out and then you never hear about again. And so, uh, in response to this, though, like I said, this
no,
story is
no.
evolving by the day. And so we're filming this on Saturday, May 10th, and then on Friday, May 9th, yesterday, the MPA had an emergency meeting with 20 of the top execs from Hollywood, including friends of ours like Zaslav and Ted Sarandos. And they came up with a proposal to basically present to Trump with the goal of the whole thing is to be able to work collaboratively with the president and to sort of get to him before anything else disruptive happened. Like that is their
Yeah,
number one goal. That is the people, the moles who were inside the meeting that reported to the varieties of the world and the deadlines of the world, basically said that they were very focused on getting to Trump as soon as possible. And so that's kind of the goal with it all. But yeah, I mean, what do you think? Do
wow.
you think does this actually happen? Like all the chips on the table, does this actually happen, or is this just something that's completely forgotten about?
You know, that's the tough thing because it's like
Mhm.
this is just me speaking from my personal exposure, through my work. But like
Yeah.
when Trump was first sworn in, and that huge wave of executive orders came through, including that one that like stopped all grant funding and like and hiring freezes. Like there was that big outcry and that confusion that came from it, and to respond to the confusion, they just like quote unquote rescinded the like they didn't like fully rescind the order. They just withdrew their communication regarding the order. So they were no longer publicly putting out
Mm.
what would be happening and how it would be going. So everything is still in effect, and like until the lawsuits figure their shit out, we like because there were a lot of lawsuits, but they no longer had to be transparent about what was going to be happening because they rescinded the communication. Like
Sure.
so this is just
Mhm.
weird legalese that I have to know about. But what has been happening, because like like lawsuits are in place trying to stop things from going into effect. They've basically been, the federal government has been forced to continue funding things that they have already promised to fund, but they don't have to pick up your grant again when it comes up for renewal. And that's what we're seeing happen, is that like programs for like people with disabilities, they're no longer getting their funding. AmeriCorps, they're funded up through like up till July, and then it's all gone. November, say hi quick. Yeah. And and I expect that this will be a confusing thing up until like we start seeing, oh yeah, every movie's being made on a Disney volume stage. You know what I mean? Because inevitably, like that's what this leads to. It just leads to this completely plastic way of making movies in a global environment, and like people like us going to the seven seas to be able to watch movies because they just won't be released here. Like we love our world cinema, and imagine how expensive a movie subscription's gonna wind up being. And like, does this just apply to new productions, or are we going to be treating stuff made over the last 125 years? If you filmed a little bit overseas, do they have to pay a little bit extra now? I don't know,
something I didn't think about.
Yeah, because you could be that vague, and and we were talking about complete psychos, kind of making these calls who like really don't have any understanding about what they're gutting or what they're implementing. You want to be in there with them? Just give me a second. I have to finish my thought here. But yeah, like if I could see something happening, I could see, like all of these studio heads kissing the ring and being like, we'll stop being so fucking woke. Yeah, well, like America's great. Yeah, we will kiss your ass, Donald. We will call you king. Just don't fuck with the money, man. Just don't fuck with the money. Like, we'll give you everything else you want. We will make a whole bunch of stuff back home again here, but please don't touch the money. Please let us make movies in Europe where it makes sense. Because, I see, one of the things that Trump kind of mentioned was that James Bond movies would be okay. So it's like he's obviously he's making it clear that, yeah, I'll pick and choose for the stuff that I like. Or for whatever it ends up being. Hey, stop that, honey. I'll grab you and put you.
Yeah, that whole. Yeah, I love that whole line of thinking. When he specifically called out the James Bond movies and like for the very reason that, oh yeah, Sean Connery was a friend of mine. He helped me get my golf courses made in Scotland. Like Sean Connery's the reason why I have golf courses, and so like that's why he's going to be nice to the James Bond movies. And I mean, if there's any franchise to do it with, I guess it's that, because those movies are famously shot in Britain in the same studio, since the 60s, and also famously shot all over the world because you have all these, action set pieces taking place everywhere around the world, especially more recently. And so, those movies like that are gonna need the help, action movies, globe-trotting like thrillers, big like blockbuster type movies that are set in, the real world. Those are the movies that are really gonna
celebrity vacation grifter movies,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because I just was looking at everything that like Netflix has, or even just it's the big tentpole shit, but it's also just every like garbage straight to video on demand like random ass action movie that's made in the Balkans or somewhere in Eastern Europe. Like in November, that's a little loud, not so much. I got both of them in the crib over there, and they're jumping. But yeah, like everybody takes advantage of these cheaper, more economical situations for their productions. And I mean, could it be possible for them to make that movie in like bumfuck North Dakota instead of the middle of nowhere, Czech Republic? Maybe. It's worth thinking about. So maybe like if there was like a balance to this, and they could be like, yeah, Donald, we'll think about making movies in California again. We'll think about making movies in Idaho again. We'll like finding some way to have a truly domestic industry where it's not just so regionalized in those hubs. They like if there was some deliberate, choices being made and some concessions being made, then yeah, this totally unreasonable first pitch for this plan, if it leads to something more reasonable across the board, that's probably better because like to a degree, he is right about the problems within Hollywood. Like they are addicted to getting like these giant tax incentives and for like getting like their budgets back, when they make one of these movies. But that we have to be real. Like entertainment is a global thing. And we would be really, really stupid to completely cut it off from appealing to the rest of the world. Like that's bad business, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just bad for art and commerce in general. So
Yeah,
this is
definitely.
bad. I hate this so much.
We'll see how kind of how it plays out, and we will follow up on any updates to this. But yeah, we might not, if something like this happens, we might not get the first thing that you're going to talk about in the watch list today. How's that for a transition?
Exactly. You did it perfectly. Because yeah, like the Eternaut is based off of an Argentinian graphic novel. One that I'd only discovered like within the last year. So it's very cool that we actually have a series for it now. But I want to be sure to get everyone's names right here, because the story behind the source material is almost as fascinating as the graphic novel and the series itself. But it was created by a former journalist named Hector German Osterheld, with artwork by Francisco Solano Lopez, and it was published in the 1957 and I think the early 60s, and it was this very political sort of science fiction apocalypse alien invasion comic, where the basic premise is all of a sudden snow starts falling outside, and anybody caught outside in Buenos Aires just drops dead. And to survive outside, you have to be completely covered. You need gas masks, and this snow just keeps on accumulating and getting crazier and crazier. And it just has this very realistic and grounded way of exploring this really high concept and bizarre storyline. But it calls to mind things like Lost for me. It calls to mind, to a degree, I can see you, honey, and I need you to get down. That's not safe. It calls to mind even things like The Last of Us, because I'm kind of watching that show and and the Eternaut at the same time. And hey, November, stop that right now. Not so much jumping. Cut it out. It's way too loud, and I can't even hear myself think, and that's a problem. Sorry. We will we will edit that out. But what's missing from the series, but is November. No, cut it out. Hey, do you need? Okay, sorry. What's missing from the series, but is in the comics, is the conceits that the Eternaut, the title of this whole thing, is the main character who has traveled between universes and is telling his story to Osterheld.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, okay. and it hasn't quite manifested in the show yet, but what the source material did was, oh, these aliens are invading. They've made a deal with the Americans, and they've basically sacrificed South America and Latin America to these aliens in exchange for them being left alone. Hey, November.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah,
Get up and get
I like
up.
that. So they I was gonna ask if there's anything about this, like
Then get out of
in
it.
addition to the snow thing, like if there
Yeah.
was a paranormal element or
Oh,
supernatural element. So there's like a supernatural thing going on, or extraterrestrial thing, I should say.
yeah, yeah, and it's
Okay.
very and it's done very elegantly. Like they're just these blue beetles for now, and it gets a little more involved as the series goes on in the comics, and this is very faithful. Apart from being in the modern day versus the 50s,
Mm.
the reality is of the because like an EMP blast is also kind of like a part of it because everything with a computer doesn't work anymore. Only certain vehicles can work, and they have to get really creative with how they survive it and everything. And the characters are very interesting. The fact that it's in Spanish is welcome as well, because I know like that was one of the demands from the creators' families was that this had to be filmed in Argentina. It had to be in Spanish. They didn't want it localizing it for Americans, and Netflix was willing to fund that. And that goes out the window if we have tariffs on stuff like this.
Yeah. Well,
No,
it seems to be
Denver,
paying off
cut it
because
out.
I've seen a lot about this show in the last, 2 weeks or whatever, and it's interesting that it comes out now. Like you had mentioned, you're watching this with The Last of Us, and when things like this tend to happen, where we have two shows or two movies that are very similar to each other, or similar in theme, I guess at least, what ends up happening is one always gets compared favorably or unfavorably to the other. And I think in this case, I don't know if you've seen any of this, but I think people are sort of turning on The Last of Us a bit and sort of
Then
are
get out of
like,
there. Let's get you out of there. Luca's
like
not being nice.
this
Come here.
show is, so much better, and it may truly be, but it's just funny how things like that tend to work
Yeah,
because
is it because
where things get compared.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like this is so streamlined. It's just 6 episodes this first season. We are getting a second,
Okay.
and not to rag on The Last of Us Part Two, but I mean they knew what they were adapting, right? Like
Yeah.
this does compare favorably with the first season of that show.
Mm.
Like you can see that they're on the same like level and wavelength to a degree. This is obviously a lot more humble in terms of like the scope and scale it can have, but it does
Mhm.
it so effectively. And what's the lead actor's name? It's God, where is it? Ricardo Darin or Darin. Like he's in
Mm.
like a whole bunch of like really famous Argentinian films. He's like their De Niro, I guess I'd say, or like their Tom
Okay.
Hanks. And he does a really, really good job as the lead, but all of this cast do a really good job. Even like the random bit people we only get for an episode. Yeah, it's a very worthy effort. It's worth your time to watch it. And if for no other reason that the guy that created the graphic novel was killed by his own government and disappeared, off the face of the
Jeez.
earth because of it. Like it was so popular and it was like so like targeted at the government of the era that like they literally wiped him off the planet because he was
Wow.
writing this comic. And so yeah, like that's really what got me interested in the source material was just hearing the story about what happened to the writer. Yeah,
Mm.
because that's pretty wild. That's pretty crazy. And I guess that if we take this tariff conversation to its furthest possible extreme, it's not just
Yeah.
that, oh, we're going to punish you financially if we don't like what you're doing. It's we're going to kill you if we don't like what you're doing. So it seems very poignant that that's part of the conversation. And to, I guess, leap from that to the next watch list item, in keeping with the tariff conversation, though, is that if we only have, like the biggest players being able to make the biggest movies all over the world, we are just left with a Disney industry. And so, what can you tell us about the movie formerly known as Thunderbolts?
Yeah. So I guess I completely skipped Captain America: Brave New World. Still haven't
I
seen
think
it.
everybody did.
So- Yeah, most people did. And I decided to give Thunderbolts a chance. And you know what? It's fine. The movie's just fine. Better than a lot of the more recent MCU output. I would say I would go so far as to say the best MCU movie since probably Avengers Endgame, which isn't a terribly high bar to cross, but good. And I think that the reason why it's successful is probably the most experimental MCU film
Hmm.
since something like Eternals, but it's way more successful at what it's trying to do. Yeah, this is a very small, much smaller scale as far as an MCU film goes. It moves at a very, very much slower pace. There's actually not a ton of action in the movie, and the action that there is, it's much smaller scale, and a lot of it's done practically, which I kind of appreciated. And it's also dealing with themes that are pretty hardcore for an MCU movie, like depression, suicide, child abuse, like pretty hardcore stuff as far as MCU stuff goes. And this is getting called, like MCU's Suicide Squad. And I don't think that's true at all. It's not nearly as like funny as something like Suicide Squad. It's not as violent as Suicide Squad. It's more like if I had to call it MCU's version of something, I would call it probably like MCU's Justice League International, I guess,
Okay, yeah,
maybe. So that's kind of more the feel of it, in my opinion. But yeah, I thought I had fun with it. This isn't, the action is pretty cool. It's very grounded. The final like set piece is something you've never seen in an MCU movie where, it's not like a blue light shooting up into the sky or two characters having like a Dragon Ball Z fight where, a blue laser is hitting a red laser and they're trying to like battle out each other. And the final set piece literally like takes place in like a character's mind in this one. And they're like, it's really trippy and it's really like weird. It doesn't really make sense, like the geography of the place where it's happening. And so it's really kind of inventive.
hmm.
But the way here's where the movie stumbles. Nobody cares about the Thunderbolts as a team. Nobody cares about this collection of characters. And I'm gonna spoil. I mean, Disney has already spoiled what this movie does. So, I mean, I'm going to spoil it right now, but they've already done a good job of doing that themselves. But this is not the Thunderbolts. This is what is going to become the new Avengers team because they've literally retitled the movie The New Avengers. And so, if this is our official Avengers team, then it's kind of it's kind of like Wolf. This is not exactly an eclectic mix of banger Marvel superhero characters. We have three super soldiers. We have a spy that has no powers. We have a girl that can turn herself invisible, and we basically have Marvel's version of Superman. And so this is not the banger MCU characters that should be in the Avengers. This is the shitty like D-list characters
Yeah,
that nobody really cares about. And so I don't know. I hope that like because it's implied that Sam Wilson is also making his version of the Avengers
yeah.
and these two teams are, going to clash in some way. And so I hope that this is not the team that like wins out because yeah, this they should not be the Avengers. And but yeah, it was a good movie. I liked it. I had fun. Um, you probably don't need to see it in a theater because, as I said earlier, there's not a ton of like big spectacle in the movie. But this is going to be a very important movie in for the future of the MCU. I feel like this is going to be as important as the last Captain America was unimportant. To kind of make the illusion there. And so and the end credit scene definitely like it is an end credit scene that is going to pan out very, very soon. And I won't say exactly what it is. You've probably heard about it by now,
Yeah.
but just in case you haven't,
Well, and the director of this movie has even kind of spilled the beans that if what you've seen in that end credit scene is actually the first footage of Avengers Doomsday, because he didn't direct it.
okay,
The Russos did.
okay,
They came,
interesting.
they
Okay,
like
I
they
didn't know that.
yeah, when they announced the start of production on Doomsday, that's when they shot that. So technically,
Okay,
it's footage from that they've just incorporated.
sure. Yeah, that that could be really cool. I'm really, really. I mean, it kind of stinks that they've basically spoiled like
Yeah,
the ending for. I mean, there are now no stakes. I'll just put this out there in case somebody hasn't heard about what this end credit scene is. Stop watching for about 30 seconds right now. But basically, the ending of the Fantastic Four movie that comes out in about 2 months has already been spoiled by the end credit scene of this movie. So it's kind of you win some, you lose some. Either you have a shitty end credit scene that, doesn't really seem to pay off, or you actually have a end credit scene that will make a difference going forward. And they sort of chose the latter. And so I can't really fault them for that. But yeah, it's, yeah, better than I thought it was going to be. And, check it out, on Disney Plus, I would say. You don't need to run out to a theater to see this. Check it out once it's on Disney Plus.
definitely, definitely.
Mhm.
Because yeah, I just on principle, I don't watch Marvel movies in theaters these days,
Mhm.
and in fact, if I can help it, I don't see anything. Coming from from Disney, Star
Mhm.
Wars, Marvel in theaters, if I can help it, just because they they don't deserve it. They just don't deserve it. I guess I will probably see Doomsday in theaters. I will grant you that. But I've been burned so many times, especially for this show, having to review
Yes.
their slop. And if I can avoid it, I will. But yeah, I'll have to check it out. I've heard mixed things. It kind of sounds like a mixed bag. It's a giant hug box of a movie. And
Mhm.
yeah, like this is your A tier, Avengers team if you just want your heroes to have issues, swear in a PG-13 fashion and, cry and hug about it. And that's if that's your cup of tea, I'm happy for you. They have made the movie for you. Uh, Next up is, of course, Andor, the second season, long awaited second season. What is it, like a $300 million price tag for this? Like 12, like, is it even 12 episodes? I can't remember
Yes, 12.
yeah, 12 episode count, and has it been worth the wait? 2 degrees in waves, because
Mhm.
the problem that I have with this is that instead of like really giving us a proper, like banger, like full line through it, narrative, with like lots of like set pieces and payoff, it like I just don't see that $300 million on screen. It's got great writing and great acting, and all the production value is awesome, sure, but like I don't have something that really makes me go, "Wow, holy crap!" Like how did they do that? That's where all that money must have gone, because it
Mhm.
still did. Like there are things that should be that massive moment. Like in particular, there's this like really important and critical sequence in like a square, of a like in a city on a planet being subjugated by the Empire, and you just expect it to explode and get massive, and it just feels so small when it shouldn't. Because it does have like like those the stirring moments that you're looking for from a show like this, but I just really disliked how so much of what should be in this isn't, because they do this thing where like every 3 episodes you basically get a movie, like a little mini movie, like a little mini arc within the whole, and then they'll just like jump ahead like a whole fucking year and leave you with all these dangling threads where you're like, wait a minute, what happened to that guy? What did they just leave B2BO on this fucking farming planet? Like, did no one come back for him? You know how fucking sad that is? Like, and I guess maybe that's the point, because like everything, and I know that they're trying to make this more about the small little victories, that led to the rebellion forming and succeeding and all of that. But there has to be something massive at some point, and it's likely coming up here in this last little arc that's going to dump here on Tuesday. However, like I have quibbles. I have quibbles with it because for as good as that first season was, how much time and money went into this fucking one, you can't just give me something that feels so slight. It went from like, this could have been one of the best seasons of TV that we've ever had, and I know a lot of people are acting like it is, but I just don't think so. It's like it's a thin sandwich. It's like, instead of getting like an awesome like New York deli, like fucking hoagie that's just loaded to the fucking gills with toppings, you've gotten one of those C-store like Italian, like between two white bread cut in a triangle, like C-store sandwiches. That's what you're getting instead. And it's like, it should be more than that. But
sure,
it's not the gourmet thing that you have to be like a true believer. You got to be a crazy super fan to be completely satisfied with this. I know it's better than most things. It's like, it is absolutely better than most things. But when you've built up my expectations and my standards for what this could and should be, you can't just have it be filler. And so much of this winds up being filler. And you get maybe like one episode in a 3-episode arc where you're like, holy shit, like we're there, but then you're not quite there, and it feels small when it should feel massive. And I think this is the last season of this that we're gonna get, but the rate that they are accelerating, like we are knocking on the door of the Battle of Yavin, and and Rogue One. And it's just, they move too quickly. I would have almost liked better that they hadn't done all these massive time jumps and just built, like if we had a few, because like the central thrust of this whole season is them going, okay, we're just going to show you how the Empire are like the Nazis. They literally have a scene that is a 1-for-1 of the recreation of the Wannsee conference, like in the when the Nazis planned the Holocaust, like where they set in stone what the final solution was going to be. It's literally the conspiracy movie that HBO Films made starring Kenneth Branagh and Stanley Tucci. Like they literally have like the same shots of like people taking a break in between talking and like eating finger food, and like looking out windows that are made to look exactly like the ones from that mansion. And I'm like, yeah, I see what you're doing. Appreciate what you're doing. Like, I get it. Cause like, apparently there's a planet called Gorman that has this mineral on it that the Empire that specifically Krennic just has to have, obviously because they need it for the Death Star. But in order to mine that stuff, it would break the planet up. It would like hollow it out. And so this planet of like rich, affluent, like clothing designers who just harvest silk sewn by giant spiders, like there's only 800,000 people on a planet. Seemed a tad low, like if they were talking about liquidating a planet with like 1 billion people on it, that'd be even more horrific. The scale just didn't seem high enough. And effectively, yeah, the crux of this is you have the ISB and the Empire knowing that there's these cells of resistance around the galaxy and trying to use that to their advantage so that they can make the case for destroying Gorman like it's Iraq, or Afghanistan for the oil and shit like that. And so there's lots of layers to it, and it's interesting, but I'm just not quite sure that they're going to stick the landing here now that we're coming up at the end. but
Mhm.
at the same time, I want more from it. Like this season's not enough. They left a lot off, like on the cutting room floor, and just like off screen that I wish we could have seen. And we could have gotten at least 4 or 5 seasons of a show. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but if this is all they were going to give me, I'm kind of mad that I didn't get more out of it.
Yeah, that's interesting because um yeah, this it was refreshing before. I haven't seen any of the second season. I definitely plan on watching this, but it was sort of refreshing to know before this season even came out that like this was going to be the last season. Like we're doing two and then we're done. And so it kind of stinks to know that it really didn't pan out for this type of show because yeah, it does 12 episodes also seems like a lot, like
Yeah,
for a season, but it's interesting that the formula that works so well for season one seems to not be working for this season because season one was kind of structured similarly where it
yeah,
was like we're going to do 3 episodes on this heist, and then we're going to do 3 episodes on this prison break, and then we're going to do 3 episodes on this, and I don't know. Yeah, I guess it just seems like something was kind of lost, and maybe it was the time jumps. Do you think it really was the time jumps that make it kind of not work as effectively as the first season did?
yeah. For me, that's the
Yeah.
issue. Because like jumping ahead a few months is one thing. Jumping ahead a year from one episode to
Hmm.
another is just jarring. And they're like Saw Gerrera or Guerrera, however you say his name, played by Forrest Whitaker, and Mon
Yep.
Mothma are like the highlights of it. They're giving you the best moments. Like and
Hmm.
like Luthen kind of takes a back seat in a way that I didn't like, but it was so that Mon Mothma could be kind of have the focus. And
Sure.
and the and yeah, the whole Gorman storyline, having it be from the ISB's perspective, like there just wasn't enough development of that. Because the is it Cyril, the guy that's like
Yeah, Cyril Karn.
Cyril Karn, he like from like in one episode, he's doing the job that he has, and then in the next, without much explanation, he's now on Gorman, basically doing this undercover insertion operation into the Gorman resistance to see if like they can be coaxed into picking up the gun, that's been set on the desk for them, so to speak.
Mm.
And then like after like one or like episode of of the kind of exploring that where he's like going to meetings and stuff, we jump to like a year later when shit's like popping off and people are like in the streets singing songs like it's Les Miserables, and there's this encounter between Cyril and another guy where he's like, "You bastard, we know what you were," and it's like, well, they certainly didn't know what he was the last time we saw these characters interact, and it just there's just so much missing from the in between where you're like it just doesn't land, doesn't stick, and that's where like it would have served it to, like if they could have developed these storylines a more little more traditionally, like if we had like a 22 episode season of show format where you'd like really get settled in, with all of this content and really taking your ginger time to arrive at the destination. It just seems like we're going from like season one, like halfway through season two, to all of a sudden being in season five from one
Mm.
episode to another. That's kind of how it feels.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm still definitely gonna watch it, and I want to see kind of where things land because from what I've heard, literally the last moment of this show it takes place like seconds before the start of Rogue One, or not the start of Rogue One, but from the point at which we see Diego Luna in Rogue One, this show
Oh,
goes all the way up until so. Yeah, kind of curious to see how that's gonna play out because if people don't remember when you see the first time you see Diego Luna in Rogue One, he literally murders a person in like the first 5 seconds he's on screen, and so yeah, very very interested to see where that how
and
that
and
plays into it.
and see, I'm glad you brought that up because like that is the kind of character he is.
Mhm.
Like he is willing to take any action. He knows what he's involved with, and he doesn't need anyone to say like, "Oh boy, you're not committed enough. Like you're not ready to do what's necessary." It's like, no, the motherfucker's ready. And like, there's
Mhm.
some really great moments in this season that show that and illustrate that. So, yeah, no, I'm gonna have to rewatch Rogue One. Like almost to kind of prepare myself for the end here, because yeah, it's gonna be interesting, and it's been a worthwhile experiment. I don't know how else they can make something like this, because like after you do a show like Andor, what do you do next? Like as far as Star Wars goes, yeah, I know they should probably start making fucking movies again, but as far as television goes, they could do so much better than key jangling, and this just proves that, even despite my quibbles.
Mhm.
But speaking of what's going to be in theaters here pretty quick, is
Yeah.
a sixth Final Destination movie that no one fucking asked for. So you've taken upon yourself to take on the Herculean task of watching all of them. So, what can you tell us here?
Yeah, I just decided to. I was probably inevitably going to see Bloodlines in theaters, the sixth movie, and I've never seen four and five of this series. I had seen one through three, in their time when they came out, because I was kind of that age where you would, that's what you would do on a Friday night or Saturday night. And these movies, they practically direct themselves. You have an elaborate opening set piece. You have these inventive Rube Goldberg like kills. You have a cameo by Tony Todd, and you've got a Final Destination movie. That's a Final Destination movie. And after watching all five in such a short span, it's pretty evident that they get progressively worse as they go on. Um, Both four and five are like pretty bad movies. Like they are not very good, and partially because both four and five place a heavy emphasis on 3D movie effects that are no longer in 3D, because we don't really have 3D movies all that much anymore. But when those movies came out, 3D was like huge, in sort of the early 2010s to mid 2010s. Um, and the fourth and fifth movies really, really overuse CGI, really bad CGI in all of the kills. It looks awful. And so I don't think those movies are very good. I think one and two are genuinely good movies. They have some of the most iconic set pieces in these films, between the plane crash in the first one and the logging truck like highway pileup from the second one, that has just sort of stuck in people's minds ever since that movie came out. Nobody wants to drive behind a big truck anymore. They want to get ahead of it, and because of that very reason, because of the highway pileup that happens in that movie. And personally, for me, I have a soft spot for the third movie because I like the roller coaster, derailment that happens, and kind of the ballsiness of the third movie's ending, where everybody dies. Literally everybody, all your protagonists are dead by the end of the movie. And I think a lot of people did not like that, because I think the third movie has the worst like score on IMDb out of all the movies. And but these movies are fun. They're awesome. I know why these movies are popular again. They're constantly on the front page of HBO Max. They're all on HBO Max. And the reason why is because these movies, they were made from the year 2000 to the year 2011. And if you're a millennial, you can't really help yourself but enjoy these movies, because everything about them just oozes the 2000s. It's the music, the fashion, the decor, the pop culture references that the characters make in universe are just all it's all 2000s, like nostalgia bait. And so it's fun to watch from that position alone. And
God,
even the
that clip was just so funny.
oh yeah, of the guy getting like smushed by
Yeah,
the
the
yeah.
explosion. Yeah, I
Mhm.
don't know.
Yeah, it's the set pieces are pretty incredible. Even in the fourth and the fifth movie, the opening set pieces, that's always the thing with these movies, is there's like an opening like 15-minute sequence that is like they put like half the budget of the movie towards. And even in the fourth and fifth, it's good. And yeah, I think that these movies are just fun to watch, and none of them are over 90 minutes long. I think the fifth movie is literally like 82 minutes
Oh
long,
my
and so
gosh.
they know what they're doing. You know, they know who they are, you know, making these movies for. And so yeah, it's you could literally spend a whole afternoon watching these all five movies. You know, you could literally binge them like a TV show basically, like TV show episodes, and none of them are very long. And but yeah, the first one especially. I mean, if you plan on seeing Bloodline, at least watch like the first one because I think the first one is genuinely a good movie. It was even out of the context of how novel the idea was, you know, you have all these like awesome like you know, early 2000s actors and actresses that showed up in all of these movies, you know, like of course I'm kind of blanking on it now, but it's let me look it up real quick. You have like Devon Sawa, Ali
Hmm.
Larder. You know, of course, we've got Tony Todd in there. Just all of these like early 2000s actors that were on like this trajectory, and then they kind of all crashed and burned, I guess. But yeah, really fun to watch. And like I said, they're all on HBO Max. I mean, most you can just watch them all for free, and they're constantly. Yeah, I always see these movies on the front page. It's like they're in the top 10, you know, most popular movies, and I do want to see the sixth one. I'm really looking forward to the sixth one just because it seems like they're shaking the formula up a bit where it seems like the reason why the movie's called Bloodlines, or at least I think, is that it seems like the all of the victims in the sixth movie are it's a family. It's like a mother, daughter, dad, son, you know, uncle, whatever. It's an entire family who is supposed to die in a disaster, and they're all getting picked off one by one. So that's kind of an interesting spin on things, in my opinion. So yeah, I do want to see that one.
Well, and I'm just now kind of realizing and appreciating the fact that like the first run of these movies were directed by James Wong, you know, of the X Files and Space Above and
Mhm.
Beyond fame, and Dragon Ball Evolution, which is the movie that ended his career. But yeah, this like it was from a certain time and a certain era. I love seeing all of the like the boutique websites at the ends of the trailers here. You know, like back when
Yeah.
like that used to like really be a thing. Oh man, and yeah, and they just have like, yeah, seeing Ali Larder is like actual like playing a teenager is so jarring because now she's just like a
Mhm.
milf, you know, like oil wife on Landman right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's so great for that. I really can't emphasize enough how, you know, these movies will just give you that like that nostalgia like dopamine hit like every 2 seconds. You'll get something, you know, whether it's like, oh, look at that person's weird frosted tips. Remember when everybody had frosted tips and, you know,
Jinko
stuff like
jeans,
that.
man. You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
Jinko jeans, yeah.
definitely. No, because I've watched the first one somewhat recently, and I remember being kind of on board and invested because
Mhm.
it like you say, it was novel, and it still kind of is. It's like it created a whole legacy. I don't know how would it like, besides like the monkey, what qualifies as a Final Destination ripoff?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, yeah, the monkey is probably the most notable one, but as far as like movies where I mean, I think the closest analog, not in theme, but just the closest analog to me are the Saw movies, in
Yeah,
that
okay.
the Saw movies are basically about these like little vignettes, these little set pieces where there's these elaborate Rube Goldberg like, you know, devices that are gonna kill people. And it's sort of that's probably the closest analog I would think. But
Put that
but
in
yeah,
the sync, buddy.
very fun to watch. Very
Definitely.
fun to watch. Mm.
And speaking of fun to watch, the main event for our show today is a little movie called Clown in a Cornfield, which is for I think in a first for our show here, a young adult novel adaptation. I don't know that
Is
we.
it really? Is it young adult? Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know it was young adult.
yeah.
Okay,
This is
weird.
a young adult novel, and
Okay.
written by. I need to pull his name up here.
I think it's like Adam. Is it Adam Caesar? Is that how you
Caesar.
pronounce his
Yeah,
last name?
yeah.
Cesar?
Cesar. Yeah, the winner of the Bram Stoker Award for Best Young Adult Novel. So it's a
Okay.
thriving trilogy about a clown in a cornfield. It's directed by our good friend Eli Craig, who did a movie that I think a lot of people enjoyed called Tucker and Dale versus Evil. This is not quite as profane and edgy as that movie was. This is safer. This is a safe R-rated, slasher film, and it's one of those situations where it's like this is made in such a way that this is for baby's first slasher movie. This is every like 10-year-old out there that was like wants to watch a horror movie this summer and this fall. This is the one that I think any parent in this country could feel safe putting on for them. You know what I mean? Because it's basically a Scooby Doo episode where people actually die,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's pretty graphic, but like there's nothing really objectionable about like what happens in it. It's even quite wholesome, like, and but it's soap opera storyline. Like, oh yeah, my mom died of an overdose, and my dad is like still all not all there, but so he became a doctor in this tiny town, this hick town where they have like corn everywhere and a burned down syrup factory, and everything's just like hunting and shit. So it's like on the level where it was just like showing small town life, I was like, this is what it's like. They are getting it 100% right. All of these people are real. I know them. I've been around them. This is the kid that literally just has a rifle in his truck at all times. Very realistic. Also realistic. Closeted country boys. Like I won't spoil it, but like when that moment happened, and like the female characters are all just like, oh, and it all like clicks for them what's been going on this whole time, and that they've been breadcrumbing. Like as the movie went on, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, it's wholesome. This is a wholesome little murder movie, which is not something you often can say, but it's like it's almost cute, and it's capable. It's not great, but for the most part, if you were just watching this for free on with your Shudder subscription, I think you got your money's worth. But what did you think about it?
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar vein. Yeah, just by the numbers slasher movie. I think it's the thing that kind of puts it like very slightly above mediocrity to me is its meta elements, which I really, really enjoyed. Um, I definitely think it takes a while to get going. It's a lot of setup for the first, roughly half hour, 45 minutes. But then, like, once things get going and the movie sort of finds its funny bone a little bit more, I thought it was a lot stronger. Um, the weakness in the movie sort of lies with its attempt to construct this emotional backbone. I didn't think any of the father daughter stuff really worked for me. I thought a lot of it was kind of pretty corny. But, overall, just it's not a bad way to spend, a summer night at the movie theater. I was thinking while I was watching it, I was like, God, I wish I could have seen this at like a drive-in. Like this would be like the perfect like drive-in movie. I know there's a couple of them around me here, and I wondered if they were playing it, but um, this movie reminds me a lot of last year's. I don't think you ever saw this, but it reminds me of the movie Dark Harvest from last year, which is a pretty well-regarded horror novel that they turned into a movie. But there's something that is sort of lost in the transition from page to screen, and you'll never find that is more the case than if you go and you look at like you go and you look at conversations about this movie that the book fans are having where they are just so pissed off about the way that this movie was adapted, and they talk about the book of this movie as if it was like you know Tale of Two Cities or something like that. Just like amazing, like creme de la creme horror novel, and then they talk about the movie as if it's absolute, dog shit. And it's like, I don't know if that's quite the case, but there was definitely something lost in the transition
Is
from
this for
page to
me?
screen because of how well regarded the novel seems to be in comparison to how the movie is
Is this
being
for me?
taken. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed myself, while I was watching it, and it only sort of hit me after the fact, just kind of how, generic it was, and it was,
Yeah,
fine it was, I guess. But yeah, I don't know where you wanted to go now with it. I guess,
we should
yeah, what
talk
did you
about
think
the
of the,
clown.
yeah, the clown,
Yeah,
yeah,
like, I
yeah, the
guess
twist,
the clowns is because yeah, like
yeah,
because Brendo the clown. I don't know because I after experiencing what the fuck are those Terrifier? The Terrifier
terrifying,
series. All scary clowns are just so passe to me. It's kind of like vampires. They were kind of
mm,
killed, is until. But then again, like it's funny because I said that I felt that way about clowns. I felt that way about vampires, and back to back now we've got movies that have completely like like you flipped me the other way where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm fine with this again. I'm not annoyed that we're getting another creepy clown movie because I don't know. Because I'm glad that it wasn't supernatural. Because like whenever somebody would like get their Jack in the Box and turn it, I was like, oh, is that what like activates the clown to kill you? Oh,
mm.
but like I liked the explanation or the twist rather that like this is basically just hot fuzz. It's like for the greater good. Like sort of a
Yeah.
situation. Because it's I don't know, but it, like the as far as like the friendo himself, he is like Art the Clown's like retarded cousin that he just like lets come along, you know. But then again, it's not as scary if it's just some wacko adults just wearing suits and
Yeah.
costumes. Yeah,
Yeah, they
unfortunately.
did a good job as far as, the twist goes. I think they did a good job of dangling red herrings, for me anyways, because
Yeah,
I think the point at which I knew what the twist was when the multiple clowns showed up. I was like, okay, I understand exactly what is happening now. But before that, I was kind of like, okay, so clearly what's happening here is her friends, her new group of friends that everybody's constantly calls the bad crowd. They're basically uh actually murdering people, actually killing people for their YouTube videos, for their social media videos, and that's what's happening. And
yeah,
basically they're, she's gonna find out that all of her friends are, the various clowns or whatever, or one of them is. Because I thought it was really funny how, you know, before the twist is revealed, in that scene, that barn party, the teens in this movie, the main group of teens, they're sort of portrayed as like pieces of shit, like
yeah.
piece of shit
They're
teenagers, where they're like,
scumbags.
yeah, they're scumbags. They're very anti-authority. They rob a liquor store. They're just, plain old piece of shit teenagers. And then once they are no longer the suspects, once, we know what's going on, they suddenly all become like protagonist material where they're like, they're much more agreeable. They're, their backstories are more fleshed out. And I found that to be pretty funny, where it's like, okay, I understand what you were trying to do here with the red herrings, and then once that's out of the way, you're trying to like, milk this for some emotional, give these people some stakes, give us reasons to root for these people.
Yeah, yeah, because they really were like because it was almost like Thanksgiving level of like shitty protagonists where it's like you were
Mhm.
like I want these people to fucking die. Like they are
Yeah.
categorically the worst. And then like when
Even
the
like the vapes, like they
yeah,
they all they were constantly ripping their vapes, and then as soon as like they become the suspects, they're not the suspects anymore. All the vapes disappear, and it's like, okay, that's interesting too. So what is the message you're trying to send here? That like the only people who vape are like, piece of shit teenagers? Like what is happening here?
it's a good question because otherwise yeah, like the meta elements then come into play too. Like there's that one character who's like, we're running through a cornfield, and I'm gonna be next because I'm the black one, because
Yeah.
like they just like not realizing that they're in a horror movie like that, and and
Yeah.
the part
That was
where
my favorite part.
and the part where like the last two survivors are like running to a house and they're like ringing the doorbell and they're like, should we just go in? And it's like, I think we're at that point. Yes. Like they're just getting exasperated with like trying to act like there's still conventions of like politeness that need to be obeyed when you've survived a massacre like that up to that point. And
Mhm.
then subsequently not knowing how to use a fucking rotary phone, or not knowing how to use a stick shift. Like they really went after Gen Z here pretty hard, but they deserve it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they deserve it though.
Yeah, those meta stuff, all the meta stuff was, yeah, my favorite part of the movie. That's when the movie sort of, like I said, it found its funny bone. It found its playfulness, and like the them playing around with the girl who was shot with the arrow and the
Yeah,
decapitated head,
yeah,
um and the clown, when they were hiding in the cornfield and they were all putting their hands over each other's mouth, and the clown put his hand over Quinn's mouth. That was all really
that
good.
was
I love
effective.
that stuff. So yeah, definitely my favorite part of the movie, and then just like the thing that was the most refreshing about this is it's not falling prey to like the sort of overly serious, like no fun nihilism that a lot of modern slashers are kind of, I think, doing now, because it's sort of, I guess, I don't know, it's being seen as unique. I don't think it's really all that unique anymore, but I'm talking about movies like, the Halloween reboots, and the movie I really hated from last year, In a Violent Nature, and the latest Scream movie, and the latest Strangers movie. Those movies, they steep in nihilism, and they steep in no fun, and they're just like, the only thing people can really say about a lot of them is like, oh yeah, the gore effects were really good. When that person got their head ripped through their stomach and then out their back, that looked pretty good. And so yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm glad this movie didn't fall prey to stuff like that.
That there is something to be said about that because it's like not everybody needs to be Michael Haneke, making a horror movie. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and and like, people need, especially in the slasher genre, you have to like. And I guess this is something that Terrifier, is the exception to as well. We'll have to say it's like it can be fucked up and gory and everything, but what we loved about those movies from like the 70s and the 80s ultimately was that they were fun as well as
Mhm.
scary, and like you gotta have some room for that. Like there has to be some joy, some cinematic joy in there, and it not just being a pointless exercise in misery. Like we don't, not everything should be that, and and there's a time and a place for it. But like if you're just
Mhm.
gonna make an exercise in nihilistic misery, go with God if that's what you want to do. So I would like, I still haven't seen In a Violent Nature, and I may never, but I may only ever see this movie once, and that's fine. But I guess
Yeah.
we'll see if they make a sequel. Maybe we'll expand this mythology. Maybe it'll get more in line with the quality of the novels that I'll never read. But
Yeah.
who knows? I do want to shout out the fact that this was made in our backyard. They filmed this in
Oh,
Manitoba,
okay.
so
Yeah,
it's
I didn't know that.
just
Okay,
across the
interesting.
border. And so there you go, America. Here's another fucking movie that you won't fucking get if Donald Trump tariff, Hollywood tariffs get in place. So call your congressman, hit, like you, get on Truth Social, get the Don in order, because imagine this movie being at 125% tariffs because it was made in Canada.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, it was
It's absurd.
such an obvious shoestring budget that, yeah, this movie probably never would have been made, or if it would have been made, it would have been like even more shoestring. I mean, this is a Shutter movie, and so
Yeah, yeah.
um, all of their movies are pretty low budget, I think. But yeah, it's funny you brought up the ending and the potential for sequels, and I thought it was really funny that Kevin Durand's character just gets away and he's never spoken of again. And just how like presumptuous that is that
Yeah.
they are going to get a sequel made, that there will be a sequel because I mean obviously he will come back because they literally don't say anything about him at all. But I thought that was pretty funny and
They move on
um
very quickly.
yeah. And one thing, sort of a programming note that I wanted to make note of here that I just kind of want to get on the record in case this happens more and more. But I noticed that, you know, at your theater, your local theater, the Minot Theater, they actually devoted an entire screen to this movie. And one thing I am noticing around here with movie theaters, especially because, you know, I am in one of the sort of major metropolitan areas of the country, is that it was incredibly hard for me to find a showing of this before 5 p.m.
That's crazy.
And I think that I've been noticing this more and more often where with smaller horror movies where the theaters around here, what they're doing is they're basically splitting a theater's show times every day between like a kids movie and then a horror movie, where the kids movie will get like the 11, the 2 o'clock show times, and then the horror movie will get like the 5 o'clock, the 7 o'clock, and the 9 o'clock. And they're doing that obviously because the kids' movies make more money during the day and the horror movies make more money at night. And that's it's so weird. I just I've never really that's never really happened before, even when I was working at movie theaters, and it's very, very strange to see. And I hope it doesn't become a trend with like the bigger horror movies because God damn it, I want to see my horror movies at 10 a.m. in the morning. I don't want to go to the fucking 9 o'clock showing at night with all the piece of shit teenagers, you know.
Oh man, I'm not sure what Luca did, but he did something. Okay. Yeah, but
Are we still live?
Yeah, we're still live, but my mic
Okay.
is now my mic
Oh boy.
is now mobile.
It's flopping
All right.
everywhere.
All right, hang on here. I need to give the boy
Yeah.
something to mess around with. Here, leave me alone, you little monster. Okay, so now we're gonna hand hold it. Apologize for the noise.
Yeah.
That
That's
may or
okay.
may not happen. So yeah, that's Clown in the Cornfield. Motherfuckers need to wise up. It's not like we're trying to split up two like 3-hour runtime films at the same theater, like on the big screens or something like that. Okay, give it back to me. For how long? Oh, it's yours.
Yeah, I mean there's really not. I mean we're if this seems like a short featured review, it's because it is, because there isn't a lot to really say about
Exactly.
this movie at the end of the day. I mean, it's just kind of, you know, very, very by the numbers slasher. I would say, I mean, like I said earlier, not a bad way to spend a, you know, summer night at the theaters. But you could probably wait till it hits Shudder in 3 months
Absolutely.
because that's exactly what's going to happen. I kind of, when that Shudder logo popped up at the very beginning, I didn't know this was a Shudder movie, and I was kind of like, oh fuck, like I could have just we could have just probably waited, yeah, but whatever, you
But
know.
it's not often that like a Shudder release actually gets a wide theatrical one. So
No,
yeah,
not at all. Yeah.
maybe
Mhm.
we have a new trend happening.
Mhm.
Moving on to the mentionables here. Why don't you take it away? What were you checking out?
Yeah, so I renewed my Game Pass subscription this month in anticipation of Doom: The Dark Ages, because I'm very much looking forward to that game. But in the meantime, until that comes out, I've been playing the latest JRPG, and I say that with a J because this is a French RPG called Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This is basically a French or French Canadian, I think it technically is French Canadian Final Fantasy game for all intents and purposes. And I've been having a lot of fun with this. I'm a big fan of. I don't play a lot of JRPGs, but I have played most recently, I guess, the remakes of the Final Fantasy VII, the two remakes that came out, and I loved both of those. Just immaculate, immaculate RPG games. And this is kind of in the same vein, where This is essentially a Final Fantasy game, but it's done on, I think a group of 30 people made this game, and they found their writer on like Reddit, I
Yeah,
think, and
and their composer on
they
SoundCloud.
yeah, they're composer on SoundCloud. So this is a very like by the bootstraps video game, and it doesn't play that way though. It plays like a big budget RPG, and it's pretty fascinating that they were able to make something like that out of such a collection of mishmash of people. And yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with it. It's really really good. The story's really good. The If you don't like JRPGs, I still recommend giving it a shot because yes, it is turn-based combat, but it's not just picking shit from the menu like turn-based combat normally is, because they sort of inject a little bit of um I don't know, Dark Souls energy into it, where you need to basically parry or dodge enemy attacks, and also there are like basically like these quick time events to get critical hits when you are attacking. So
Hmm.
it is turn-based combat, but um it's very very kinetic
Yeah.
turn-based combat where you're always doing something. You're not just waiting for the enemy to attack and whatever. And so yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with it. I love the story. The thing that is propelling me through this game is the story. The story is that good. And
Hmm.
so yeah, for a writer that they've just like found on Reddit, all of these people have a future in the video games industry, I think. From the composer to the writer to the game designers. I think this is a massive success. I think they said they had sold, last I checked, 2 million copies
Yeah.
despite the fact that this is on Game Pass. So just a stunning success all around.
Well, and the lead designer or developer, it was just a bored Ubisoft employee who just got sick
Yeah.
of working on slop and wanted to do something fun. And so he poached, yeah, like 30 junior devs who had never made a game before, likely had just been working in QA or God knows what else. And yeah, it is so cool that this is so successful. And
Mhm.
yeah, I've been thinking about renewing my Game Pass subscription. I'm not gonna lie, because there's things on there like this, and and the Dark Ages as well. Because yeah, I don't want to just spend the money on it when I know that, like, I don't know, my graphics card needs to get upgraded. I know it likely
Mhm.
won't be able to handle the Dark Ages, even though id games are, you know, famously well optimized even for lower hardware. Because like Eternal looks like $1 million on my computer for some reason. It's like one of the best
Hmm.
games you can play on your Steam Deck. But from what I've heard, this thing's gonna be like 400 gigabytes in size on your hard
Oh,
drive.
Doom?
Doom, yeah,
Really? Oh my
yeah.
God. No, I
What?
I didn't hear that. Yeah, that's pretty
We're almost done,
if
and then
that
I'll
is the
wrap it for you.
case, that's
Okay,
kind of
just a
annoying.
couple more minutes.
That's like two Call of Duty
Give me a
games.
few
That's
more.
like
I know. Just give me a few
yeah,
minutes.
I hope that's not true. I hope that's just like
Well,
speculation or
if you're
something, but
playing it on a disc, that's how much is on a disc apparently.
okay.
Yeah, which
Huh.
is
Yeah.
with an 80 gigabyte, download to like patch it and like get it running. Like
Okay.
that's the rumor that I've been hearing, which would be atrocious. Okay,
Yeah. Too much.
too
Yeah.
much.
Optimize condense and optimize your games, developers.
Please.
We don't need to have games should never be over like 100 gigabytes for any circumstance. No.
Exactly, exactly. And like if Cyberpunk 2077 and like Grand Theft Auto 5 can be reasonable, like sub
Mhm.
100, I think anything can. But I guess I'm wrong about that. For my mentionable, not it's kind of a package deal here. It's a Magicon, which is the premier comic book fandom convention in North Dakota. That was a couple weeks ago, and it's free comic book day. Well, came the week after that, and I was really only there for work. I get a free pass to walk around and take photos and like interview people. Minot, has a new comic book shop because of this convention. A lady from out of town came to the convention. heard that we didn't have like an actual comic book store, so she went and moved up here and like leased a space and has her own setup going on. But if you got to go to the convention, there was lots of cosplayers. All the vendors were, it was at the State Fair Center, so it actually felt like a real convention. When I'm done, if you let me finish, I need you to be quiet. Like, because like the last year it was just at the Minot Municipal Auditorium, just a glorified gymnasium. But the State Fair Center is like an actual convention space, and it really felt like it leveled up and grew up in a way that it needed, for me to like really take it seriously. They have Doug Jones comes to Imagicon like every other year, so it's not so novel that he was there, and he's kind of always at these conventions. It seems like it's how he feeds his family, is making these appearances. But it was really cool. I got to see the 1966 Batmobile, nice. that kind of thing. And Free Comic Book Day was pretty rad too. It blew my mind. Some of the selections that they had on offer. Mm-hmm. Like there was this. Well, I haven't been able to read many of them, but November got a Spidey and Her Amazing Friends one, and she loves that. But there's a Black Mirror comic series apparently where they're adapting the episodes, and the San Junipero one is kind of neat because it's like in progress. They're just giving you a taste of what is done, because like it's not colored yet, and eventually as you flip through it, it just turns into pencils and then roughs, like thumbnail roughs of what the pages will look like. So kind of cool. I hadn't had a Free Comic Book Day in a long time, so it was awesome that I was able to enjoy that. Shout out to Mythic Emporium and Emily, the lady who runs it. It's pretty nice to have that back in town again.
Yeah, I also went to my local shop for Free Comic Book Day, and I really love how much of an emphasis they're placing on the kids' books, because at some point you can't just have a bunch of 35, 40-year-old dudes shopping at comic book stores. At some points you need to get the kids on board. You need to get them reading, and so I'm glad that they have all these kids books, and I'm glad they still have stuff for me too, because I picked up all of all the stuff I was excited for, and read through it all. And I sometimes I really hate when companies basically use Free Comic Book Day as like they use their Free Comic Book Day book as like an ad for all of their stuff that's coming out. It's like 3 pages of this book, and then 3 pages of this story that it's basically like comes out August 2025. I hate when they do stuff like that. But when you get the good stuff, then Free Comic Book Day really kind of becomes good. Because I mean, this year for me it was the DC book was really good, the Superman book that came out, and the G.I. Joe book, or the G.I. Joe Transformers shared universe.
Yeah, the Energon universe one. I grabbed that.
That was really good.
The 2000 AD one was really cool too, because like I guess essentially it was just like these are some greatest hits stuff. So they gave you like some short stories from the past, and I don't know. Like, I'm always intrigued by 2000 AD Judge Dredd stuff, but they have so much more going on than that. And I got a little girl who really wants us to be done. So on that note, though, check out the Eternaut. It's awesome. Campaign to the people who you voted for to represent you appropriately in regard to movies, and check out Clown in a Cornfield as soon as you can, because it was kind of okay. That was our verdict.
And also, real quick, by the time that this episode goes up, there will have already been another minisode that has gone up. So do check out my latest minisode if you haven't already. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, Matt, and thank you all for watching, and have a good one.
Yep, see ya.